All right, to continue. So basically, now we've made it to the point where he's convicted based on the letter of the law. And there's another charge that I didn't realize, is that he made this signaling system. So the charge was a conspiracy, or setting up the capabilities to spy in the United States. Conspiracy is different than actually doing it, but it is a criminal act, and he's convicted on this. Okay. Now, basically, in here they start. They basically start slandering him. I mean, the Officer of War Information is a propaganda. And here we go. You know. It is one of Kuehn's proud boasts, according to FBI information, though he is once considered for the position of the chief of the German Gestapo under Heinrich Himmler himself. Yeah. I mean, come on. Here we go. Let's, now I got Nazi spies. Nazi agent. No, it's not a Nazi agent. I think I've been through all this. I'm writing in regard to this item as in our local paper, and just seemed right. A man like J. Bernard Kuehn should be let off 50 years hard labor. I feel he's deserving of a death sentence, as I feel he is the same as a murderer, or even worse, being a spy. To see Mr. Hoover, why, I feel like a good many mothers feel we have our sons as prisoners. Japs somehow, it's like, give me a fucking break. All this guy did is stupidly get in a cat and mouse game with the Japanese, and it was a chess game, to see whether he can get them to help him smuggle money out of Germany, prior to them, here's more write-ups, Basically, the story as it is today is derived from these early stories. Now, here's one other thing that okay, let's just get, because this is just basically them bickering over and rebranding his his life. Then we get to his release. War ended, so he's in Leavenworth's prison. He decides he's going to write. And Otto Kuehn now fundamentally knows that he was tried and convicted under martial law. And you notice the sentence that was passed out under martial law was kind of permanent. Something, death. You couldn't do anything. I mean, the initial punishment was death. You can't do anything about it. You can't undo that once martial law is gone. Once martial law is gone, all of a sudden, theoretically, this guy might have rights to trial. So let's see what Otto Kuehn said. Regarding the possibility of reopening my case by myself, since I'm not familiar with the law of the U.S. government, in a rather helpless situation. I was recently informed here that you are the competent authority for my problem, which I'd like to describe shortly in the following lines. One day after the attack at Pearl Harbor, I was arrested in Honolulu, accused of conspiracy of the Japanese government, and on February 21st, sentenced by military court to death. The sentence was later commuted to 50 years confinement in federal penitentiary. At that time, martial law had been proclaimed in the Hawaiian Islands. I am guiltless and assure you I was in no way connected with the attack on Pearl Harbor. Among others, I count the following facts for my conviction. And this is where he gets stupid. It's kind of true. A certain arrangement on the islands after the attack, I'm looking for a scapegoat to cover up the Hawaiian affair. That's true, but that doesn't prove that doesn't help his facts of his case. In truth, he was convicted on a technicality. But he did violate the law. I mean, it's just, what can you do? The FBI agents did everything to prosecute me and went too far in their efforts, did nothing to investigate my case justly. And I think that's true. That they went too far. They gathered way too much information way too early on this guy. Ignored evidence that would tend to prove his, he was just doing some... Listen, folks. No matter how desperate you are for money, don't ever think you're going to be able to outsmart another government while pretending to be a spy against your host country, because things will probably not turn out too well for you. If you're lucky enough that someone's can see through the hysteria and perceive the facts, you'd be damn lucky it happened, because I mean, this is a classic case of yeah, okay. Most of the witnesses I'd asked for either refused or did not appear in court. Yeah. I had no professional lawyer except a defense counselor who's not familiar with lawsuits going to help me. And then he talks about the, eavesdropping. Documents would have been clear evidence I had no connection with the attack and never had any intention for conspiracy. Was held back by the prosecutor and not read by the military court. It was a conversation I had with my wife at night. Since the martial law, this is the important part. Since the martial law in Hawaii is suspended and the war with Germany has ended, I see now my chance to assert my rights. Yes, you do. Please let me know which steps I have to enter in this manner. Well, no, he's not your fucking manservant. You need to get yourself an attorney, bro. That people don't work for free. Be assured I am decent enough not to have made this request if I would have felt guilty. That has nothing to do with anything. Everybody should have the right to fair trial, whether they feel guilty or not. If you want to plead guilty, go ahead, but don't. This is nothing. Please, I would be assured I wouldn't even try to get out of prison if I felt. He's kind of screwing himself there. Anyway. But I do think that he's the kind of guy that thinks, everybody else is just going to do the work for me. Okay. And here's the letter. Oh, here's an attached letter from, this guy at the penitentiary. And then this is 1945. The Assistant Attorney General is now looking into the case. They're quoting him and say, he feels that he's guiltless. Just so you know, there's numerous of these. Basically, the FBI got a copy, or were informed every time the prisoner got some mail. This is Edward A. Tam. Now this... They never released a transcript of the testimony in the Kuehn case. And he says that someone stated there's something going on that might be embarrassing to the military. And in that transcript, it's most likely going to mention the two individuals that were running out the dormer house in Lanikai Beach. And it's likely going to mention that in the cable sent by the Japanese, there was mention of the Lanikai house, the dormer window. It's probably also going to mention that the agents found no evidence of any kind of signals being sent in the month before. I don't know if it's going to mention, or anybody ever realized, that since the Japanese themselves, under encrypted wires sent out in June 1940, that they had no idea who this fucking Kuehn guy was, but check him out and take his information. that he had not worked for the Japanese prior to that date. And if it were handled in a certain way, it might be embarrassing to some extent. Yeah, it is embarrassing. I mean, we got newspaper articles saying the guy is a Nazi, saying he worked for the German government. They didn't have any of that information. It was a conviction based on his own confession. Whether his Miranda rights or whatever were read to him, who knows? No one knows that. There's no evidence of that in here. But anyway, what I wanted to get to. This will be my last one. These repetitive details. There's one, when he gets released, there's one thing that I want to show. So basically, once he sends his letter, and through the whole entire length of 1945, there's people going back and forth talking. This, whatever. Someone else is saying no, it wouldn't be embarrassing. Other people are saying yes. Okay, then all of a sudden, here we are. He signs a they reconfirmed his internment. Oh, this is what it is. This is what they would do. And I'll get, let's see. I'm going to get to this. I'm going to find this, and then we'll go back to this. I'll explain what they would do. Basically, they were notified of his release in 1948. And written here is it was astounding that he was released. Now, what legal mechanism did they use? The same legal mechanism they used were the people they had picked up from Guatemala, Honduras, and whatever, and interned to the United States. They literally would either have the governments of Guatemala, Panama, Honduras, whatever country in South America, go in, lack of a better word, kidnap the German nationals that were living there and deliver them to the United States to live in the internment camp in Crystal City, Texas. And then at the end, they'd have a judge rubber stamp a form, under the oath of whoever had brought them over there to say, oh yeah, I was told these are all alien enemies. And so they would order these people to remain interned at some prison or somewhere else. Not the because they stopped using the they stopped keep so they were going to either go to prison or be deported. The internment camps were no longer going to exist. And so is what they did with Kuehn, is they said, okay, well, in consideration of the evidence before me, this alien needs to be put into prison. However, if you would like to sign this document and say that you want to relinquish your citizenship voluntarily, relinquish your attempt to become a citizen of the United States, then by all means go ahead, let us know, and we'll just deport you, and you won't have to go to prison. Isn't that nice of us? And that's what eventually happened. And then we've seen in the aftermath how I read her article. So I'm done here. I'm satisfied I finished with this. So it was a little difficult to start out, but I did. There is good reason to, there's good reason to believe that he was innocent, but there also is some reason to believe he was guilty. Inasmuch, if you believe that he was not honest at all, I can't really. A lot of the dates in his account do add up. There's some lies I caught, but what we don't know at the end of the day, it's an open question as to whether. We don't know. Mr. Kuehn knows, and whether he can tell us till the day he dies repetitively, we still don't know, just upon Mr. Kuhn's word, whether he had ever sent any signals to the Japanese government. However, I have a secret, I've been able to piece together what probably happened, mostly based upon what he's told us, and I've come to the realization that it was that he wasn't really spying, he was just playing a cat and mouse game with the Japanese government, who eventually at the end actually took revenge upon Mr. Kuehn for not cooperating. And beyond that, I mean, he saved someone's life that would have been killed otherwise, as a result of the way the Nazis behaved. And I truly think that when this family was involved with the Nazis, they really didn't fully understand what the Nazis were all about until some point in time when it was clear that their daughter would have been in jeopardy. I mean, certainly Mrs. Kuehn knew in January 1942 that her daughter would have been killed by the Nazis had it been known that her father was a Jew. And Mr. Kuehn did what he could to make sure she was not killed. And so you put the two together, you just see a person that was the victim of, for the most part, the victim of kind of stupid in his own right, spending too much money, not being careful of that, not being able to keep a job, having his own problems. He's a human being. But he lived in a time where events were too more powerful than he, and he was eventually forced to leave his country. And I don't know why he didn't mention anything about his daughter in his own testimony. And he, the way he laid out his own story, it may have been abundantly clear to him when he read it, the sequence of events that I was able to come up with here, but it wasn't clear to me until after I'd studied and thought about it for a long, long time. And truth is, the guy was arrested on December 8th, and he was put on trial, mid-February, 2 months for them to figure out what had happened. There's a lot of other things going on. So, and he did break the letter of the law, unfortunately, and fortunately he was commuted, but there were a lot of other effects that really damaged that family's lives, and the rest of the family were treated like second-class citizens. They had no rights, and their family was ruined by that and by the stigma of being a Nazi family, which people still repeat to this day. So I hope I cleared that up, but that's what happened, basically. The man decided to play cat and mouse with the Japanese and do everything he could to convince them that he would spy for them, so they would send money that he needed to live off of, because he was not allowed to get money out of Germany, and it was unsafe for him to return. And unfortunately, the family wasn't. So the mother wasn't the kind of person that would go out and do things for herself. She was the kind of person that expected everybody else to wait on her. So it never occurred to her to take a boat back to Germany and sell her property there. But the problem was she still wouldn't be able to take the money out. So I don't believe by that time. So they needed money to live on, and he couldn't go back to Germany. He was really literally in more danger than he thought. And they weren't very perceptive. They didn't really understand the party that they had joined, but until finally they realized that, not only had Mr. Kuehn been threatened, but their daughter had been threatened as well. And then they decided to leave. But there may have been other people that had fled Nazi Germany and then were rounded up and brought over to Crystal City, Texas. And then, once the war was over, deported. These are the same, they just showed up at the wrong time, but like everybody else, they were part of the poor huddled masses yearning to be free. That saw the Statue of Liberty with its torch. So anyway, that's it for that.